That's what kind of dryer do you have? Shivers.
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 Okay, I'll say law.
Perfect. There you go.
Law.
Law. There you go. Well, shit. When we talk about efficiency.
Never heard of that one.
So, we're talking about cross-flow dryers. Talking about cross-flow dryers.
That's Brock, right?
Yeah, and we sell Brock bins and Nico dryers. That's the only.
Yeah, they all say Brock on them. We're in the current system. So it's kind of hard not to,
Yep.
not that far away.
So, we're talking screenless dryers. And the name of the game is we're getting away from screens. Now, when we're talking to in-bin, it's a little different, but any sort of screen dryer is what we're talking about. And you got a law, which doesn't have screens, and you got shivers, which are in-bins, which technically have screens, but they're an in-bin, so it's kind of in its own grain column class. So, does anyone know anything about these cross-flow dryers? No?
Well, I got one they haven't set up yet.
Oh, well, there you go.
I used one.
Yeah. Yeah, you still got that one, eh? There you go. So, when it comes right down to it, there's a couple drawbacks. One, there's no screens, which means that the dust and the red dog goes everywhere. Its main advantage is there's no screens, because you don't have to worry about the screens getting clogged up and changing your efficiency. The other downside is they're big. But the whole point is it's got to be big. You can't cheat. If you have a small dryer, it can't be as efficient. You need the size because you need retention time. So when we look at a screen dryer, we all know that the hot air starts on one side and it moves through the grain column. In an in-bin dryer, you have a huge grain column, right? Whether it's a shivers or a stirring machine bin. So when the air gets through the top, it's 100% saturated, which is great. But when we have a screen dryer, your column's a lot thinner, so you're getting that air into the moisture, and then it's coming through, it's cooling out as it goes away, and we have more CFMs per bushel because they're smaller. And then we're not getting 100% saturation because we're blowing the air through too quick. To get away from that, we don't have screens, but we have the ducts come through, and the ducts, think of it, instead of putting on the side, we're dumping the air along the top. Every time the air goes along the top, dumps into the grain, and it comes out the exhaust column. Every time it does that, it goes over a column, it kind of stirs it up, moves it around. Keeps the grain loose because there's no height. There's only 2 feet of grain depth. So it's loose. It's
a
moving.
batch dryer, right? A batch dryer?
It's continuous flow.
Continuous flow.
Yeah, but it keeps it moving. But I get what you're saying. You're thinking like a GT batch where it's always moving. So it's coming around. The grain's loose. It's not being compacted. Wet grain packs hard, right? This way we're keeping it moving as it's drying. So we're never drying the same kernels right underneath this duct. Won't be the same kernels right underneath this duct. We're stirring it up. A big feature of like tower dryers would be grain flippers. If I'm trying to sell you a big tower dryer, I'm going to tell you that mine has more grain flippers than GSI's. This has a grain flipper constantly throughout the whole dryer. So it's stirring the grain up way better. What we're doing though is we're bigger. And if we go to the chart, if we compare a screen dryer to a screenless dryer, it's got 6 20-horse fans. The capacity is around the same, a little bit, tiny bit slower, but we'll call the capacity the same. And the hold capacity is 1,800 bushels, okay? When we go to the Nico dryer, our hold capacity is 2,600 bushels. Our capacity is the same, and we're running 100 horsepower. We're running 20 horsepower less. So since we're using 20 horsepower less, we're using less energy. The reason for that is because we're bigger, our CFMs per bushel is lower. Also, our static pressure is lower. So when you're trying to push a lot of air through something, you have higher static to push it through. So since we're running it lower, the burner is going to burn more efficiently, and we're going to be in that heat longer. So as the CFMs move through slower, they have a better chance of picking up all the air. So all that extra air is at full moisture. Even when it's harder to pick it up, right? When the grain's really wet, it's easy to pick up 100% moisture. But when the grain's starting to get dry, it's harder. It needs more time to get that air fully saturated, and that's what we're doing. So if I was from AGI Nico and like, I would tell you 20% easily more efficient than a screen dryer. It all comes down to the way you run your dryer. You go to the temperature plan. So this is kind of a standard way of running your dryer. You don't have to do this. We actually have dryer charts for running at 180 max temperature. Most guys run these dryers at 180, not 220. So the lower we run the temperatures, the longer the retention time again, which is going to get us better grain quality and better efficiency. But we can only make it so big, and we do have to get harvest done eventually, right? So the other downside, other than their size, is that they're dirty. Every dryer is dirty, but this dryer here, I know it's tough to see, guys, but there's red dog stuck to it. You don't have to wash the dryer throughout the year, throughout the harvest, like a screen dryer, because we're not going to change the efficiency of the dryer. We just got to wash it at the end of the year so that it doesn't rust. And as long as we do that and it doesn't rust, the thing's going to last for 40 years. If you want to get away from that, having red dog everywhere, you can put these dust panels on. This is Marty Dirks. This is where the first field tour event was. And Marty put this dryer up. We took out a 36-foot top dry and put this thing in. And Marty's house is about 250, 300 feet away from here. So he put these panels on, and it redirects all the red dog and all the dust down to the ground so that he can clean it up. The dryer is about 7 feet off the ground. It's tall enough that Marty's a big guy, that Marty can walk under there and not smack his head. The other nice thing that it does is if you have a tower dryer, on the windward side, it's colder. You're blowing that heat away. You have different column temperatures, so it's colder, which means you're going to have more blending at the bottom. Here, we don't have that trouble as bad because our grain column is very thick because we're dumping the air on the top, not on the side. But once you throw these panels on the side, the wind doesn't affect the dryer at all because there's no wind pressure against these exit columns. So that's just another small advantage of having the panels. The dryer has a stainless steel pipe train on all the gas, so that if you want to try, we got guys more and more wanting to do like biogas and stuff. So you have more of an advantage of less uniform gases. You know, sometimes biogases can be higher moisture or just other stuff in it. At least we're using a stainless pipe train and not a carbon steel one that's going to rot out faster. The other big advantage is natural gas is still the best way to, best bang for your buck when it comes to drying grain, but we can't control how much we have, and sometimes Union Gas and Enbridge are kind of jerks about giving us more. They don't really like our industry because we don't use it all winter long. We all turn the dryers on at the same time, dry the crop basically 6 weeks, and then say, we don't need you anymore. And that really messes with their volume. So Marty here, he had a GSI top dry with 2 fans. He had enough gas for 2 fans. So he ran these top 2 burners, natural gas, and these bottom 2 propane, and that comes from the factory that way. CSA, there's no need for field approvals or any of that other shenanigans. So you can expand your dryer without having to upgrade your gas if it's not reasonable. You can also convert them down the road if you have to, but it's a much better, gives you way more flexibility as opposed to, there's lots of guys around the countryside that kind of have a T and a propane and they kind of crack the valve and hope nothing catches on fire. This is the legal way. You can actually tell your propane supplier you're doing this. So makes for a big advantage to be able to use every little bit of natural gas you have. And then, because Marty, for example, will run this bottom section cool, except for on a bad year, right? When you've got 30% corn, when it's a bad harvest, it's a bad time to get it through the dryer too. Is the dryer going to take it better than some other dryers? Yes, but it's still going to be tough because junk grain is junk grain, right? So on those years, he might run 2 propane to natural gas, but on most years, he's not actually going to run this bottom one heat at all. It's going to be a cooling section. So it gives him the flexibility without having to commit to it. So the other thing is when you have longer retention time, you're also going to have less chance of rebound. Basically going to eliminate rebound completely. And you're going to have a higher bushel weight. The longer it takes to do it, the better. Again, it's no different than your in-bin dryer. If electricity was free, natural air would be the best. We just had a guy say, what did he say? 70, what was the corn he bought? 75-pound corn. That was natural air. It's great, except you can't natural air a lot of corn. Sounds great, but how are we going to natural air out 1 million bushels?
Is it out of the winter?
Yeah, maybe.
16% this spring. Absolutely.
So
Just put some air to it. Gee,
exactly.
your
So
job was only 50 acres, but
it's the 3,000 or 4,000 acres.
yeah.
It's a lot of bins, and we can put it all in stubby bins. I'd love it, but that's the thing. Does anyone have any questions?
So how much added cost for that 20% efficiency, and how long is the payback on the added cost?
So it's all going to come to how you run your dryer. And one thing I will say is the person who buys this dryer is thinking about capacity, or sorry, is thinking about efficiency, quality, right? This isn't the sports car of grain dryers, right? A small screen dryer running at 220, 240, 245, 250, that's the sports car, right? I need to get my harvest off, I need to get it dry. This is what we call it the cruiser or the big truck, right? We're gonna run it slow, we're gonna run it properly.
Lincoln Continental.
Yes. So if you came to me and you were running and you wanted this dryer, there's a good chance you were also running your previous dryer very consciously. So, but at a 20% savings, depending on the tonnage you're putting through it, it's going to pay for itself real quick. So it all comes down to what I'm comparing it to, the amount of tonnage. So, yeah. And what the harvest is that year.
Yeah, you're talking about the grind issue. Yeah, a lot of years about grain with commercial elevator.
Yeah.
It was a difficult year for all. They cranked the heat to the corn, get it to the dryer, 250, like you said. Grade, then down, because it was 250, the grade went down, so they grade discounted to the farmer.
Right.
Yeah.
Because another elevator.
They cranked the heat up to the corn to get it through. Yeah. Because, like, the manager wanted to be gone by the first December.
Don't they grade it wet?
For so long. Well, right?
They knew it was good down there.
Oh, no, very, very true.
So
the opposite too, how low of a burner temperature do you go? So like I do IPP, they don't want them dried in the dryer, but something everybody else in the county's going, and I'm waiting till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon before I get to start.
yeah, so you can run ambient, or you can run you can have a 20-degree temperature rise. We got one, I don't know if you know, like Grand River Bean, just over in Paris. They love it. We put belt conveyors on the bottom, and they run everything through that way. So yeah, you get the temperature down very, very low. The other thing is if you're trying to keep your temperatures low, you can be running one section at maybe 50 degrees and the other one's at ambient, but it's not going to be in that section very long. So if you should actually be doing that on like an off-on, but that's always a pain in the butt where it goes heat, no heat, heat, no heat. You can do that if you have enough sections of heat, steep, keep it sweating it out, right? You want to sweat it out slow. So, but yes, that's always IPs are a lot of guys. Honestly, vast majority of dryers we have out are guys who do beans. You can run canola, you can run any product through it. So. Huh? It is. It's also got centrifugal fans as opposed to axial fans, which definitely makes a big difference there. We're not too many. Some dryers still come with axial fans, and they're high speeds, so they're super loud. But we got centrifugals required. makes a big difference. It's like health and safety. They don't. A couple of manufacturers don't even make the axle fans anymore because they have issues with people then having hearing damage claims against them. It's craziness. So that's also, if you looked at a picture of Marty, I'd give stairs access because the standard's ladder, but only for so long. Anything else?